Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Mia Park, and this is my interview series called In Response, Interviews with Intriguing Internalizers. So this is I'm so grateful for this opportunity to talk to really interesting, cool people that I think that you'll find interesting as well. We're talking about their outside world and their internal response to their outside world. So just to date stamp this, it is July 6th, 2020. We keep saying it, man. We're in the middle of a racial justice pandemic, in the middle of a global health pandemic. And right now, this country that Jen and I are in America, we're doing not so great on both accounts. So then we have people like Jen and I here who are doing our best to navigate this for ourselves, our loved ones, and the world. So I'd like to introduce Jen Peterson, everyone. Yay. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Hi. So Jen and I know each other from a 500-hour yoga teacher program. Jen's in Vermont, and I'm in Chicago. And we were in Austin for almost 2 years, like every 6 months. It was intense, and it was wonderful. And Jen's a lovely human being. So I'm so glad that we know each other that way. And she's doing some really good work up there in Vermont. So is there anything else you want people to know about you?
So the only thing that I thought of to share, which is sort of just this quirky kind of thing, was I really love words, right? So I love the way they make you feel and how they sound when you say them. All kinds of words, and it can be in all kinds of languages. Obviously, I know English the best. And I had a great opportunity now that we're doing everything online to take a yoga class from one of my favorite yoga teachers. Who I did my yoga teacher training with, and she was teaching, and she said, "I'd like you all to sit down on your rump." And I thought, oh God, I haven't thought about that word rump in so long, and it's just a fun word to say. So I've been saying it in my classes all last week. Rump. I just think it's, yeah. And then when you think about it in terms of like a piece of meat, it's not so fun, but it's sort of playful to think about it in terms of the human behind.
Rump.
So, yeah.
I like
rump.
it.
Just saying rump.
Rump. That's good. Yay, Jen, rump. And you know what's nice for me? I'm so like, it's hard for me to turn off my political mind like the rest of us. Yeah. So I feel like it's re-owning that word that might start with a T. Because the word of that starts with a T is the same thing as the word without a T. But we're like re-co-opting that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that guy has nothing to do with how much I like that word.
The sound of that word, rump instead of the other one.
Rump. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Jen. Cool. So let's talk about beautiful Vermont. And what does outside world look like to you? And what does inside world say to you now?
So I think it's because we have such wide fluctuations in weather, but we talk about the weather a lot in Vermont. So I'm just going to start by saying it's gorgeous here right now. And I think I speak for a lot of people in Vermont that we're sort of like in awe constant. I'm looking up because I'm looking at the trees and the blue sky together, like that contrast of green and blue, because Vermont's, I don't know if everybody knows this, but it's one of the cloudiest places in the country. And about 8 months of the year, it's usually raining or cloudy or snowing. So this is just such a beautiful time of year, and it's really fun to be outside and enjoying time here. So it's great. And it's not especially populated, so there's a lot of nature to enjoy. That's part of the other external world that I'm living in. So we're not especially populated. So while we've been hit by the global health pandemic like others, I think there's only 8 documented cases in the town that I live in, right? And, I know 2 people who've had family members that have died. So we're just far away from it. And in the same way, we're one of the oldest states. I think we might compete with Maine on and off for that, and the whitest. So with the racial justice issues that are going on, it can feel really easy to feel very removed from it, to have, at a time where I think white people are justifiably being asked to look at how desensitized we are, that it's hard, I think, in Vermont to connect with everything that's going on, because it's not that people aren't protesting and trying to stand up, but like there was a protest in my town. There's been a couple. We're just kind of walking around our town green, and there was one guy sitting in a lawn chair with an American flag standing next to him, and he didn't say anything to us. He didn't, it was clear he was opposing the people walking around with the signs that say Black Lives Matter, etc. And taking the knee for the 8 minutes to recognize the George Floyd time that he had a knee on his neck. So it's just, it can feel hard, I think, or how do I stay connected, and also if talking with people who aren't really understanding why it's important, to have them really understand that we're part of this nation that needs to change, I guess. So that's my external world.
Well, thanks. Yeah. That feels very intense to me. But go ahead. Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's not anywhere near as intense as what's going on where people are getting hurt, right? Like physically hurt and dying. So by all means, I think there's a lot of people in the state who are progressive and they want to do better. But I think the biggest, the biggest challenge is not, we have to stop the violence, but for real change to happen, the complacency and recognizing the privilege that we have that lets us be complacent is harder to get, I think, here. And I don't mean to underestimate the people in this state. I just think because we're so removed from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's what the intensity I'm feeling, hearing you describe that, is that on the outside, sure, there's less violence. It sounds like, because that is happening. I'm in Chicago, there was that here too. But the intention and the intense desire, that energetic push that the people who are protesting there have, it almost has to be double fold than those of us in major cities where it's constant and we are on it.
Right.
So right. I thank you for that effort, for all of you. We can talk about allyship in its different forms, and presence-wise, right? If you're in the whitest, one of the smallest, whitest, and oldest states, which means institutionalized states in the country, the onus to be an ally looks different than if you're in a major metropolis like me, where people are on the streets like almost all the day, like every day.
Right.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think being older, there's a lot of people who are very set in their ways. It's harder for people to kind of shift perspectives and listen.
I have to say, I think for outside world, for those pro-Bernie people like me and so many of us, we think Vermont's like so social democratic, and the only people there that have guns are hunters, and they're very safe with their guns. We have, of course, they think Black Lives Matter because of Bernie, but that's not necessarily true. I mean, you still have within your mostly white population, it's still diverse ideologically, right?
Yes, for sure, and I think there are definitely people who are absolutely opposed to Black Lives Matter, who are resistant completely. And again, I think the more nuanced and the subtle and the more challenging to get mass change is around that complacency and not recognizing your privilege. And there are a lot of us, and I hold myself in that category too. Like, that's what I feel like is happening in my world right now, is recognizing the privilege and what that means for ending up being complacent inadvertently and unconsciously to letting what's happening keep happening. And, beyond the violence, but just continuous oppression through our system. So and it feels hard. It feels hard. I just saw something on one of my social media feeds about Brene Brown talking about, like, we have to get comfortable with the shame, right? And not necessarily like comfortable, like, okay, well, I'm ashamed, but no big deal. But I'm ashamed at what I'm starting to recognize is the way that I've contributed to this, but I'm not going to let it hold me back from, I'm not going to wallow in sort of feeling sorry about it and trying to get forgiven, but I'm going to step forward and sort of just feel the shame, but keep going and be like, okay, I can do better. I think that's really resonating with me lately because it's hard to see. And the veil, I think the more you think about it and the more you listen to Black voices and to BIPOC voices, the more the veils just get lifted, right? When you really let yourself hear them talk about what it's like for them and recognize how systemic it is, then you can just start seeing more and more everything that you do and the way that you talk. You know, even when I was thinking about, well, why talk about this word rump that I'm liking? I looked it up online to see, does it have some sort of etymology that's actually rooted in depression that I don't know about that I should? Or, you know, 4th of July here, 4th of July in the town of Bristol, you can find it in some national news reports. Like we have this amazing parade, we have these outhouse races, we have a 5K that's run for this woman that died of cancer. And it's a really like strong community connector for us. And it feels really hard to hear all these things about how, you know, it's an independence that was gained on the back of, it was not independence for everybody, right? And it was independence in a lot of ways that was gained on the backs of people of color and Black people. And so how do you work with that? How do you keep the depth of community connection that it offers a community, but maybe not necessarily, yeah. So there's this part about like, it's not everybody's freedom that we're celebrating. So those sorts of like veils are starting to get lifted, and it's really uncomfortable because I don't want to give up my 4th of July. It's really fun, but how do we do it in a way that is for everybody? Or do we not get to do it?
Wow. Thank you for being so alert about this. You know, I hear you on kind of studying the etymology of things. It's like taking responsibility for things that come out of our mouths or actions that come out of our bodies. You know, so I've been thinking about saying the word woke. Like, I think in a general sense, I'll be like, Jen, you are so woke. But then I have to think about what that word means to me and who is woke and not. So all I want to say is thank you. I think it's a great example of being, you know, a middle-aged, middle-class white woman. You know, that's great. I think that like what you're doing, and you're very authentic and sincere about it. So if I can segue from that lovely sharing that you're doing to, would you mind sharing with us like what maybe deeper levels of your spiritual or heartfelt responses are to what's happening?
Sure. So the other thing that I have connected with is the idea that this whole racial and social justice process has to be a somatic one, that it's something about how we've all traumatized ourselves, and definitely some more than others, right? And for white people, the trauma being creating this sort of dehumanization and desensitizing of ourselves. And so my yoga practice has been really incredibly helpful in just sitting with the physical sensations and the physiological, like nervous system reactions that I have to what I'm thinking about, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing. And I think that's part of how it's helping me to recognize more and more when I am in my privilege and not, you know, and living my life with privilege in a way that's not allowing others to be part of this community wholly in the same way. So just having that space to like feel it in my body, that awareness, and make that kind of emotional, mental, physical connection, I think is is like a mandatory part of the process for all of us, because until we can recognize how just desensitized we are, then we're not going to be able to resensitize ourselves and bring our humanity back, so that more and more of us will say, no, this can't continue. So
that's awesome. As a experienced yoga teacher, talking about how you're feeling that in the body, do you have any like maybe tips or access points that people can step into? They're listening to you, Jen. Can you hear that? They're watching you. They're coming for you, girl. They're like, she's too on. She's too correct. We gotta drown her out quick before she starts influencing people.
Right.
Right.
Get rid of her.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you have any like tips or can give how people can access how they can process feeling this in their bodies as well.
Sure. I mean, I think the best thing that I can say, I think the thing that's working the best for me is like, so that example for the 4th of July, like when I first started seeing the signs and the postings about like, the 4th of July is not really an event of freedom or anything to celebrate for everybody. And having that, I was like, okay, so that's not fair. I really like it in my town, blah, 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 like resisting, but like feeling myself pushing that resistance out. And so just noticing those places where you feel the resistance, where you feel the defensiveness, or you feel yourself wanting to say something defensive, recognizing that, like pausing and just feel what it feels like in your body. Feel the bracing that can happen. I don't know if you've talked with other folks or have connected with Resmaa Menakem, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands. So this is his big thing too. And he was the first one that sort of introduced me to it in terms of the idea of like, we brace ourselves when we're hearing something we don't want to hear. And so just recognizing what that feels like in your body and seeing if you can just sit with it before you push it back out or get defensive. So it's really simple, but I think it can make a big difference to just, it's about the pause, that we talk about a lot in yoga, like take the pause, because there's a lot to learn about yourself in there before you like put yourself out there to everybody else. So, but I highly recommend Resmaa Menakem. And he wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hands. And there's a great podcast with him doing On Being with Krista Tippett that gives like just a really great like 1 hour highlight of what I'm talking about in terms of somatically recognizing what we have to change about oppression and racism.
Oh, that sounds really great. So Rachel Fleming just wrote in, love this talk. Resmaa Menakem's work is incredible. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah. Cool. So that's, I'm actually not familiar with that book, My Grandmother's Hands. So thank you, Jen. And I guess Rachel likes it too. Thanks. Yeah. That's really helpful. There's this is a very educational talk, I feel like, with you, to hear the insight of what your inside world is like, and also just practically speaking, recognizing this is hard, right? Yeah. So, it should be, it needs to be. I agree with you. I think the world, especially this country, needs to change. Yeah. And I think that there are people like you that are doing the personal work first, and that needs to happen before we can hold space and work with others or really feel the weight of Black Lives Matter and the weight of this global pandemic. Mm-hmm. So again, cool. Thanks. So am I wrong in assuming that you have trust in the future?
No, you're not wrong at all. Does it waver a lot every time I have to or inadvertently come into contact with what's going on at the president level and the administration? I can get pretty terrified. And the lack of response to the brutality that's happening at the police level. Sometimes I know that, I've seen messages of I can't believe you're still shocked at this happening. And it just sort of, I'm like, I feel so hopeless. I mean, I keep picking up the phone, I keep signing the petitions. So that feels hard sometimes to stay hopeful, but then you inviting folks on to talk about what's going on and how people are really being thoughtful and mindful about who they are and how they put themselves out in the world. And I think more and more people are doing that. It's becoming more a part of mainstream culture. And the more we do that, then the best chance we have of like making change and making America great again.
Take that phrase back from Rump.
That's right. Yeah.
Get it back from Rump. He's going to send the helicopters to come get you again, though. So just be careful.
I know.
Keep your umbrella up. They won't know.
That's right. I'm going to put an American flag umbrella up, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah." We got to take back patriotism. We got to take back the flag. Like we should all start marching with the American flag.
I know. It's such a slippery slope. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know. We're both in touch over Instagram, right? Which is its own beast. But anyway, I shared this thing on Instagram. It was an image of the American flag in different shades of black and brown.
Mm-hmm.
That's the flag I want to carry.
Yeah.
And there definitely is a lighter shade that is included in the stripes. It's on the bottom. But the fact that it is a diverse flag with different shades, honestly, that's the new flag that I want to carry.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I hear what you're saying about taking back this country and what it means to us. I'm a child of immigrants, the whole thing, but I still can't rock that red, white, and blue yet.
Yeah,
I have to wait.
I hear you. But I also feel it makes me mad that the way that things are getting framed for a lot of people who I think are just frankly scared is that we're unpatriotic, that, we're being anti-American. And that's not what this country, the values of this country was founded on. I mean, well, there are a lot of people who had values of it being for everybody. Not all people, but I want it to be for everybody. And so if it means getting that flag to mean something different than what I feel like it's starting to mean, that's what I'd like to do. But I like that other flag that you put up too. I remember seeing that up there. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, this is such a great conversation. Thank you for being so inward as you talk so much about being outwards. I feel like you've got it going on, Jen. That balance of staying rooted in your own sense of what's right and wrong and justice, and recognizing your own vulnerability in all of it, and then but still staying rooted in what needs to happen. And friends, friends watching and listening, I also want to say that I think that Jen is a great example of what an internal practice can look like. And for Jen, the path is yoga, maybe some other things. For me, it's Tai Chi and yoga as well.
Yeah.
Certainly meditation for a lot of these people I talk to in these series. So what you're hearing, these kind of conversations, again, Jen's special, but these conversations are the conversations you can be having if you start this internal practice, if you don't have one already. So thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Mia.
So thanks for tuning in, everybody. We've got these interviews going on and on. We're booked through September, so thanks for listening.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing it. It's so great.
Oh, thanks. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. That's great. I'm glad people like this. I get to talk to you. I mean, hey, it's cool. People just have to be watching, but you and I get to hang out. That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thanks everyone. If you want to learn more about Jen, you can check your information in the profile in YouTube and Facebook. So peace. Thanks everyone.